Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Albers, and welcome to This Week in Anderson on the Big Eye Sportscast on USBN Sports. And as always, I'm joined with my co-host, Steve Ellis. And Steve, I'll tell you what, our next guest was a three-sport star. Played basketball, played softball and golf, and really had an unbelievable career at Anderson. And I'm really excited that Valerie's joining us here tonight.
Absolutely. She graduated a few years after us, Dan, but I remember watching her play, and you said she was a three-sport athlete. I don't think there's any question. She probably could have been a 5 or 6 sport athlete if they would have let her. But
Yeah.
but let's not forget that she's in the Hall of Fame, class of '90. But she went in the Hall of Fame 2016. So yeah, this is a good one, Danny.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And as we said, is joining us in the Hall of Fame is Valerie Moore. And Valerie, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight. We lost you. We lost your volume, your audio there.
Oh.
There we go. Talk real quick and see what happens.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now.
There we go.
Well, thank you for having me, both of you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I just really excited to do this.
Yeah, it'll be good. So we kind of always start this podcast off with talking a little bit about growing up in Anderson, what it was like for you growing up as a little kid, going through Anderson.
Wow, I have to say, I'm a teacher now, and I'm just so grateful that I grew up when I did. I grew up in Summit Estates, and I just remember all the nights of shooting basketball, hoops, and then I remember playing kick the can and being out until dark, and then your parents having to like track you down and staying outside till all hours, and then I can remember shooting hoops in the morning and actually waking up Mrs. Marcello, Don Marcello, and Gina Marcello next door to me. And Don and I would play horse at night, and then I'd wake up Mom in the morning before school. Apparently, I found this out years later, and just chipping in the yard with my little wedge. And if it wasn't basketball, it was golf. If it wasn't golf, it was. If I didn't have anyone to play with, I took my ball mitt, my glove, and a tennis racket and a tennis ball, and I would hit it way up in the air with the tennis ball, and then I would catch it with my ball glove.
Wow.
I couldn't find anyone to play with, but no, growing up in Summit and Anderson was just such a special time, and I made a lot of friends, and I played soccer when I was little, and softball. I started softball the same time I started golf. And ended up being I wish we could have played fast pitch. We were the only, I guess, area that played slow pitch for many, many years up until my junior year in high school. In fact, let's see, your brother was my coach at one point.
Yep.
So,
Right.
But yeah, I was a pitcher and I loved it. And that's how I started when I was little. But growing up in Anderson, I just have such fond memories. And I think that's part of the reason why at one point I moved back home, because I was trying to recapture that happiness and that wonderful time of being in Anderson.
Did you have a favorite sport, Valerie, when you were growing up?
I'd have to say basketball and golf were a tie. For an individual sport, it was golf, and for a team, it was basketball. I see your UC banner back there. I went to a UC girls basketball camp, and gosh, I went to another camp. It was called the Yes I Can camp in high school, and it was such a motivational camp for basketball. But yeah, it was probably golf and basketball tied.
Well, let's talk about basketball. From your three sports, because basketball, I remember watching you play, and you're, just an incredible athlete. But the honors that you got from being, you were one of the best 3-point shooters. What you had the 3-point line in, right?
Yeah, it was my shot.
That was it. You were the 3-point shooter specialist, and your senior year, you were the MVP of the team and co-captain. How was that experience? Because you said you like playing the team sport of basketball. How was that like playing at Anderson?
It was a special time. I always laughed that I could hit a 3-pointer, but I couldn't hit a layup. My 3-point percentage was like 44% from the field. But I was like, with a layup, it was It was always like I just got nervous or something because I liked being on the outside. I was pretty slow, so I had to like shoot it from the outside. I wasn't fast enough to get down there, but yeah, I really wanted to make varsity my freshman year. That was kind of a goal of mine with basketball, and I made it the end of my freshman year with under Mr. Enders, and that was a great for me. They were pretty solid at the time. They had Holly Ennis and
Yes.
Kelsey Ervick and Holly Grigg, Ingrid Norwell. They were just really, in my opinion, pretty strong, and so I was pretty excited to make it my final few games. The reason I kind of like the team sport is I really, I look back and I could have shot the ball more. I could have, I could have probably had a lot more points, but for me, it was just making my teammates look good, passing off, getting the assists. I like to open them up, and geez, having Kelsey in the middle was a lot of fun, just dumping it off to her.
Yeah.
Right.
And Holly Grigg. So I like the team sport because I like making others look good. I like building up others around me, and maybe that's why I became a teacher. But I should have. I look back, and part of me wants to say, "Oh, I should have shot the ball more," but I did what I needed to do, handing it off.
Right. Yeah. And so, let's transition a little bit into that now, into the softball. You kind of hit on it a little bit. And I was going to ask you that about if it was still slow pitch back in the day, but you played softball, your first team all league, honorable mention 87, 88, 89. You batted 459 and 518. That's
Nice.
pretty impressive. Talk about your softball playing days. And I think you already mentioned that Brad was the coach, but talk about some of the coaches you had in softball too, as well.
Yeah, that was definitely a goal of mine as my freshman year to make varsity, and I ended up making varsity, and I was pretty excited about that. And I can remember those years when I batted that. I got mostly singles because again, I wasn't fast. I was very slow, but I got a lot of singles and doubles. And I just remember Brad hitting that ball hard at me. I mean, so being a pitcher, and then when I was little, I have an older brother who went to Anderson, Brian Moore, and he would actually really hit the ball hard at me and throw the ball at me. And he was laughing, and I was pretty little, and I kept scooping it up and catching it, and it was hurting my hand, and I was getting mad at him, but he was laughing because I kept catching it. But yeah, it was, I guess it was good training because I became a decent fielder, but my strength was the pitching and the hitting. And it was great playing under Brad. I also played under Terry Erdman, and wow, this is going back. I think that was it. I think didn't Brad was reserve. I can't remember now.
I can't remember either.
Yeah.
I know he was the varsity coach when we were there, and we're older than you.
I think I had him and Terry Erdman. I think that's what it was. And then either switched or stopped or something. But I loved playing under your brother. I mean, he was real competitive, real enthusiastic, and that really fired me up playing. And I needed that. I liked Terry Erdman, don't get me wrong. It's just that Brad had a different mentality, and it was just a little bit more like that personality. So
yeah.
But Brad would get really fired up, and I loved it.
Yeah. Well, he was still relatively young then, so.
Yeah.
So here's a question for you. Is on your Hall of Fame plaque, Valerie, it says that you were the softball MVP in 87 and in 90. So would that be your freshman and senior years? Is that right?
It actually would have been my freshman and junior year. Even though I graduated 90, it was probably the 89-90 season.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the 80, wait a minute. It would have been junior year because I didn't play my senior year, which I'm sad about, but I didn't play because I had ended up getting a partial golf scholarship to Ohio State for golf. And I just didn't have it in me to be out there for softball. I just wanted to be at the golf course practicing. And I thought, I don't know. I mean, not that you get hurt in softball, but blowing out a knee or something, I wanted to be prepared for college.
You were that, yeah.
That would have been that would have been probably my junior year.
Okay.
I'm not sure how Yeah, I'm not sure. It would have been my junior year.
Wow,
Nice.
that's pretty good. And talking about that with the golf too, it's kind of, you're doing this great for us. You're segueing right into everything that we want to talk about and
That's
how we're playing with the questions. But the next sport we're going to talk about, and Steve and I totally forgot that Valerie played on the men's golf team at Anderson. I
Yeah.
totally forgot about that.
Yep.
But was a tri-captain, qualified for the Ohio State tournament. Talk a bit about your experience about that playing. And I could be wrong or right, Steve. I don't know too. Maybe Mike Loudenslager, was he your coach then? Maybe, or no, or who was it then?
He was my coach. Yes.
Okay.
Really? I
Yeah.
thought he was later.
He was my coach. I think he was it my sophomore year? I'm trying to think. This is terrible. I can't even think back.
Now I thought he was, because I remember him coaching, and the reason I remember that, Steve, is because Tony Bueller, a friend of ours, was a golfer, and I
Yep.
remember that Tony had him as a coach our senior year. So I
That's
thought
right.
maybe
That's right.
we had the
Okay.
opportunity to have him. So, but
Yeah.
just talk.
I do remember Bill Hannikin was
That's right.
Yes.
my first year. Yeah. Maybe first and second, but definitely my first year.
Yeah. Well, talk
And
about your experience about that. How that was with him, and then Loudenslager, and then just the whole overall experience being on the men's team. I mean, that's crazy.
here's a funny story about my mom and is I was very shy as a kid. I mean, super shy. I used to hide behind my older brothers. And I remember telling my mom, I want to play golf in high school. And then there wasn't a girls team. And I said, I don't care. I just want to play golf. So we went to the athletic director's office, Mike Penwell at the
Yeah.
time. And we walked in, and I'll never forget Mike's face, Mr. Penwell. His face was just like, he didn't know what to say when I said I wanted to play golf. And he said, it's fine as long as you hit from the men's tees. I go, I don't care. I'll hit from the men's tees. I was so nonchalant about it. And then we went home, and then I went to tryouts, and all I did was hit from the men's tees. And actually, I had done that for quite a while when I was growing up. I'd be walking with my bag, and the starter would say, "Hey, little girl, the men's tee or the women's tees are up there." And I'd say, "I'm not playing from there. I'm playing from the men's tees."
Nice.
But I ended up playing first under Bill Hannikin, and I remember our tryouts, and I was so nervous. And John Ritter, one of our best player all through the years, was so supportive. We grew up right next to each other. He was right around the corner from me, so he would see me chipping, and then he'd get out in his yard and start chipping and pitching.
Great.
And we were very competitive. We played junior golf as kids, and I can remember he had gotten his big boy sticks. He got a real, a bigger set, and I still had the cutoff little, kids clubs.
Right.
And he's like, "Yeah, I got a real club now." I'm like, "I don't care. It doesn't matter as long as it gets to the same point." We had these little kid arguments.
Good
And
point.
we grew up playing Little Miami Golf Course, and John was super supportive as a team member. I ended up making the team, and it was reserve, and that was fine with me. I didn't think I was going to make varsity anytime soon. My goal was to make varsity by the time I graduated, because we had a pretty strong team back then. And John, I can't remember what he averaged, but it was definitely in the 30s he averaged for 9 holes. And
Wow.
I don't know if it was 37, or he'll get mad if I don't know it, but
Yeah.
he was pretty strong. So I knew I was just uphill battle, but I enjoyed being part of the team. I enjoyed the matches. I remember that this one varsity match, when I finally made varsity, is you could hear them, and John told me, "Hey, look at this. They got a girl on their team. We got this one." And it ended up we were up, and then we ended up being tied, and I was the 5th man or the 5th woman, and they had to take my score, and I ended up beating the kid.
Yes.
And so we were all laughing, like, "I don't care, put your words where your game is."
That's
That's
right.
right.
So that was kind of a neat story. But yeah, that was it was pretty neat. Playing under Bill Hannikin, he had such a calm tempo, just smooth, just very quiet demeanor. And then you go and have Coach Loudenslager, my next few years, and he was a big Ohio State fan, and I always loved Ohio State, especially when I went and visited. And we always talked about Ohio State. But playing under him was just, I mean, it was a lot of fun because he was very low key, very loved golf. He loved golf. He loved to play golf. He loved being around it. And I think he was super supportive of me being on the men's team. And that was the only qualification. I just had to hit from the men's tees. And I said, okay.
That's
Wow.
awesome. That's a great story, and good for you.
And
So-
my goal was another goal was to try to get on one of the teams or whatever. And then my senior year, I made an honorable mention all league for the league. And that was one of my greatest achievements.
That's all it is.
It's incredible. So you had won some tournament up at Ohio State too. You were in high school still, right?
Oh yeah, it was not a high school tournament, but it was a junior tournament. I think it was my sophomore or junior year during the summer. It was like I won 6 of 9 tournaments, and one of them was an Ohio State girls junior tournament. It was a 2-round tournament, and I didn't play the AJGA, which is like the top junior tour, and I didn't play any like real main huge events. We just costed a lot of money to play like these AJGA events and travel all over the country. So for me, playing a state tournament was a big deal, and I ended up winning that Ohio State girls junior state tournament, and I was pretty excited about that. And then the other one that I really liked, trying to think if I have it, but it was called the Judy Memorial Tournament. And this woman she was a young girl, actually. I don't know, she's probably a teenager, and she ended up passing away. And I didn't win that tournament, but I ended up getting an award for like, if you modeled, this girl and all her attributes. And so that was a special award.
Good. Very cool.
Yeah.
So going through all 3 sports in high school and, being the athlete you were, what was any type of recruiting like? And was there anything that was drawing your attention to one of the sports or one of the colleges that you were interested in?
So I had some looks from some Division II schools for basketball. And then my dad was super helpful in writing to schools for golf. And it really came down to this. I knew career-wise I was going to pursue the golf business. And as much as I love basketball, I mean, I just knew that I wasn't fast enough, and I just, it was going to be really tough to make it. Although DePaul University in Indiana, that was one that was looking at me for basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started my little trips, and I didn't get very far in looking at schools, and I hit Ohio State looking at their golf program, and I just fell in love with Ohio State right then. And I knew career-wise I wanted to go in the golf business. I didn't know how it was going to be. I didn't know what that looked like. I knew I wanted to teach, but I knew it had a lot of facets to it. So I went the golf route. And like I said, I went to Bowling Green for a visit. And when I got to Ohio State, like I said, I knew that I would find something to study, as big as that place was. I just didn't realize it was the biggest university in the United States that I chose. At the time, I was like 65,000 students, but
Right.
yeah.
So what kind of drew you to Ohio State? I mean, was it the academics, or, I mean, you said you liked the golf aspect of it, but what made you fall in love with Ohio State? I'm asking for personal reasons because my daughter's looking at Ohio State.
Yeah, that's okay. I tell you, it was everything. It was the amenities they had. It was the buildings. They showed me where they practiced during the winter. I mean, right now what they have is phenomenal. It's unbelievable what they have. I've been up there since they've redone it. But even back then in the early 90s, the French Field House was this indoor facility that was all AstroTurf and track and this huge net, and you could hit balls during the winter time. The amenities you just couldn't find anywhere else for being a northern school. And then of course the golf course has been one of the top college golf courses for many years.
Yep.
But for me, I just, I kind of was leaning toward education, and I just wasn't for sure. And I just knew that I would find something there to study. And it was just far enough, but close enough to home, 2
Right.
hours. so I could still go there, and then I could still go home if I wanted to. And I loved everything about it. I mean, Buckeyes were crazy nuts. I mean, they were crazy about their team. I went to a game when I went on my recruiting visit, and I mean, I was sold. It just was. Didn't take me very long. And it's kind of funny. You become more of a crazy Buckeye after you graduate than while you're there. Because I didn't really have the normal student experience, because I was always in qualifying. I always had to qualify to make a trip. And most times I didn't make it. And so going there, just I didn't get to really go to every single game, and I always sold my Michigan ticket. I'm thinking back now, I'm thinking, but as a kid, you could always get a decent amount of money for your Michigan ticket because you wanted to go home for Thanksgiving. But yeah, now I'm more of a crazy Buckeye than ever. I mean, my whole house is decorated in Ohio State memorabilia.
Nice. Wow, that's crazy. So, talking a little bit about that, golfing there, you were Ohio State. You were obviously a letter winner. You ended up being the team captain in '94. How cool was that? And talk a little bit about some matches maybe that you had that that kind of really stuck out to you.
I'm so grateful and very thankful that I was able to become a captain at a Big Ten university. I mean, for me, that sort of solidified my career. One thing I'm really proud of, our team had a Go Bucks award, and it was all about your dedication, your determination, and so forth. And in fact, I always relate this back to Tony Himmelgaard. He was one of my favorite coaches at Anderson under basketball. He came in after Mr. Enders left, but Tony we had jerseys that we wore at practice called Dedication, Desire, Determination, and Discipline. And it just instilled in me, these attributes. And I even wrote a paper on it in college. But it basically, the award was that, how much were you dedicated to your sport, and how much, did you allow for critique and this and that. And the reason I'm talking about this award is I ended up getting it the year I redshirted. So even though I was not participating, I was out there every day on the putting green and just hitting putt after putt after putt, and then hitting ball after ball after ball. And I was there probably before people got there and then after people left. So I ended up getting this award, which I was real proud of, because it talked about that dedication. One match I can think of in particular, when I made the varsity team, was because how it worked is you were always in qualifying. So if you won a tournament as a team, your whole team was exempt and went to the next tournament. If you placed, say, in the top 10 or 20, depending on the field, you were exempt for the next tournament. Well, I was always in qualifying. I was the one that was always that. I wasn't the worst on the team, but I definitely was not the best. I was always that middle person who had to fight for a spot. And one round in particular that I do remember is it was really cold and windy and brisk that day. The first round, I did okay, but not that great. I think I had actually, no, it wasn't a good round. I think I had 87 or something bad. It was just an awful day. And then the second round, because it was a 36 hole round day, we had a lot of days where we played 36 and then 18 the next day. So you didn't miss out on school very much. The second round that day, I remember I was on the final hole and I heard this bird go, "Cock, cock," and it totally messed me up, and I missed the putt. So I almost made the putt for 73, but I shot 74. Then here's the fifth man coming in, or six. I can't remember if I was 5 or 6 that day. And I come in and I had the low round of the afternoon, and they were like, "Valerie," because I was not the worst on the team, but I was definitely the highest one playing that round. And I almost had 73, but I had 74. But this just goes to show you how the game is. Everybody's around me, congratulating me. The next day we were real close to winning the event. And then I ended up having to count, and I had an 87 that round. And then there's nobody around you. Everyone's you're the plague. It was awful because I felt so great the day before. And then that next round, it was but that was golf. That's the difference between a team sport and individual. The only time you're on a team sport is at the end with golf, when you count up the scores.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
Good
But
story.
you had briefly mentioned about your brother Brian. I know that you still have some family in Anderson, don't you?
I really don't. Brian
No?
lives Brian's in Phoenix, Arizona. He's a captain on the fire department out there
Yes.
in the Phoenix area.
Yep.
My other brother is a pilot for American Airlines. His name's Tom Moore. You might have known Tom. I don't know or know of him, but he's a pilot for American Airlines, and he lives here in North Palm, Florida.
Okay.
And then, like I said, my dad is 92. He's up in Melbourne, so we kind of all gravitated to the warm weather. And then my mom was the big golfer. She loved the game. She's the one that got me started, and unfortunately I lost her a year ago, September. I miss her so much. She was she was my inspiration. She was my cheerleader. She was at every game in the stands, and you might have even remembered her because she was always there and cheering all the girls on.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, go ahead, Danny.
Valerie, I was just going to talk about, you kind of brought it up just a little bit, was kind of explained everything about the community. It always seems like, everybody that we've talked to about, you had a draw, you came back, like you said, to Anderson, and there's just that strong bond and that strong, talk a little bit what you think, that bond or that grab, the thing that pulls you back to Anderson, and what it's like. I mean, just how close everybody is, and I guess in Anderson Township.
well, the community is close knit, even though it's a big community. I think Florida's so transient, and I've just never felt that sense of community here. And I might be back sooner than you think again. I really came back because there is that sense of community. I think I was at a point in my life I was trying to recapture that happiness, that bond by moving back. And what I found is life moved on. Everybody was either married or had kids, or I remember going to like the first basketball game when I got back in Anderson. It was just so good to be back. I mean, the Midwest is very different than South Florida. There's just nothing like the Midwest. And, people do things for you and not expecting things in return. And I don't want to bash Florida, but it's just very transient, there's just no sense of community because you got people from all over the world that are here. And I'm just so grateful that I grew up in that area, and we were just friends with everybody, and families did things together, and kids ended up all in one house or one yard. It didn't really matter. You were just friends with everybody. And I mean, even like Lois Dale was behind me. I lived on Lois View. I mean, we were always over at other people's houses, and they were always over at yours. And you could, there wasn't that safety issue. I mean, Gina Marcel is my very dear friend. She was my best friend growing up. And I can remember we had a tent, and we camped out in her backyard one night. And I remember this cat jumped on top of the tent, and we got scared, and we screamed, and we got out of the tent. And I remember just wandering around on the street looking at the moon. And I'm like, you just don't do that now. There's just, there's like that safety issue. Like, who's going to let their like grade school kids just wander around at night? But you could do that in Anderson. You could do that. You could play out till all hours. And I think the sense of community, I think that, the community pulls together when things are good or bad. And it's just, everyone seems to have some sort of affiliation with, Summit or, the area. So.
Well, I say I'm a little biased, but Steve was on the wrong side. I was on the Summit side too, and Summit was the better side. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
I lived in two places. I lived on Linderwood, and then I moved over to Clemson Circle. So I was kind of close there too, but Steve, we had a better side. So
I know where Steve used to live, that one white house, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Little white house. Yeah, I know where that was.
Yeah, it was a big neighborhood behind me. So
because I was like, oh, there's where Coach lives.
That's right. Well, I tell you,
big deal.
Yeah, talking about the whole community, Danny, is it's never evident than seeing Valerie here and talking to her about the past, but then she's been gone for how long, and look at the shirt she's wearing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you can never take that away from her.
Yeah, you can't take anything away from all of us, even though they want to, and it's going to happen, unfortunately, but they're never going to take it away. I don't care what anybody says. It's going to be there, and we're all going to support that. I still think. I mean, it's exactly right. I mean, it's been a tough little thing for all of us, but I think as you said, we're a good community. We'll get through everything as we always do, and but it's been about. So let's kind of wrap this thing up and do one of the things that was one of our favorite things that we do at the end of this podcast is maybe talk about your favorite high school memory, and then your favorite college memory, and then a lot of these guys, some of their favorite teachers, and I think that's a cool thing that we like to do. So if you can just maybe hit on some of those.
Sure. Any sport, just my
Yeah,
favorite
just
high
any
school
memory, favorite high school memory you had, and then college, and then favorite teacher.
Well, gosh, there's so many of them. I'd have to say one of them was probably graduation, when we were all sitting up on the stage and they were going through, oh, we had our first this and we had our first that, and in this class we had this, and then out of the blue they said, and then we had female on the men's golf team, and I didn't know that was coming, and so that was kind of a cool thing, at graduation.
Yeah.
But that's a special memory. I think probably the best memory, and I kind of already touched on it, was just being honored as honorable mention all league on the golf team. I mean, to be honorable mention all league in a boys golf league or golf team league, I was just pretty proud of that.
That is pretty awesome.
That would be my favorite memory. I have so many memories. We'd be here all night, just like we all would. But I'd say that's probably one of my top ones. And then coach. Wow. I liked them all, but I got to tell you, Tony Himmelgaard was the absolute favorite coach. And when he left my senior year, I was distraught. I was so distraught because I was banned my senior year of shooting 3-pointers. I wasn't allowed to shoot a 3-pointer. So I remember I was told, oh, I saw the films. You didn't hit 30% in them, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, like I don't hit 20% layups. I remember I was so stubborn even back then that I went out there. First thing I did was I launched one, and I got put on the bench.
Oh, wow.
But I'd have to say Tony Himmelgaard, and it's because of that dedication, desire, determination, and discipline shirt that we wore. In fact, in my classroom, I have one of his sayings, like doing what you have to do, doing what has to be done, when it has to be done, and doing it that way all the time. Yeah. And I have that laminated, and I have Mr. Monkey's mantra. So I have it as one of our class mascots' mantra, but that was what we did in high school. I still have that sheet of paper that he gave us.
Wow.
And so Tony Himmelgaard was by far my favorite coach, although there are so many of them. He just, he was young at the time. He was, a lot like your brother, real enthusiastic, real, like, he pulled out the best in you, as hard as that was. And, sometimes it wasn't easy. My favorite coach in high school or in college, well, I was recruited by one coach, and, so grateful that I was recruited by her, but she left my sophomore year, and I thought, wow, this is what college is like. You get recruited by one coach, and then you don't know what's going to happen your second year. But my coach that came in, Coach Therese Hessian, she's still there. She has built a program that's unbelievable. Like, if you look her up, she's built a program that she's built a dynasty. I mean, the kids are, honestly, I would not make the team the way they are today. They are so strong. They are so strong. But my favorite college memory, that's got to be, it's probably when I shot 74, when I should have shot 73 because that darn bird made that noise. But yeah, that's probably my favorite memory. And also winning the Go Bucks award. That was pretty special.
Yep.
And but yeah, Coach Therese Hessian, she not only cared about you as an athlete, but she cared about you as a all-around person. And when we couldn't practice, I mean, we were one of the teams that was we would run 2 miles every day. And back then in the early 90s, that wasn't really thought of, all the conditioning. So we ran 2 miles every day, and then twice a week we did water workouts, and we also lifted.
Wow.
So by the time we got to the spring, we were, really well conditioned, and all the other girls' teams were like, after 37 holes, they were wearing out. But
Right.
we were in good shape. So looking back, she was kind of ahead of the game on the whole conditioning thing. And I think there was one other thing you told me I can't remember
Well,
the other.
you got
Favorite
the
teacher.
high school memories, and
Oh, okay.
yeah, just if you had a favorite teacher, but I mean, you've pretty much, the coach is fine too, but if you have a
Yeah, my
teacher,
favorite teacher was Loudenslager.
was it? Okay.
Yeah, he was, and probably Mr. Sinkovich. Who doesn't like Mr. Sinkovich?
Oh, yeah.
Jeez.
I think,
We're not going to tell him that.
well, you know what?
Yeah,
You know what, Valerie? Unfortunately,
don't tell him that.
no,
Yeah.
unfortunately, he watches these, I guess. So he's
Yeah.
going to let us know that you said he was his favorite teacher. So he'll let us know.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's pretty funny. I don't know if you know this, but Tony's the AD at Turpin High School.
I did know that.
Yeah.
Yep. In fact, at one point years back, I stopped in to see him. I think he was at Turpin, then went to Oak Hills, and then went back to Turpin.
Yeah,
Is that
right.
correct?
That is
Yeah.
correct.
So his first stint at Turpin is when I had stopped in to see him, and I think we're friends on Facebook or whatever. But it's just so special, like my memories of Anderson, and gosh, going back for the Hall of Fame. I mean, I was so like, are you sure you want me to be in the Hall of Fame? Like, you're talking to me. Like, nothing was ever good enough, and that's just my mentality. I always thought I could have been a better, ball player, better golfer, better softball player. But I just that was very special after college. A very special memory was being inducted into the Hall of Fame. I mean,
I remember that night I was there, and I remember I think I interviewed you too.
I know.
Yeah, that was a good night.
It was such an honor.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
I miss it. It's just I miss Anderson. I miss the community, and I'm probably going to be back someday soon.
Well, that's good. And Valerie, you got to make sure that when you do, you come in and get a hold of us. We'd love to catch up with you. We said it to everybody that we talked to, and it's really cool that a lot of people said they would try to get with us, and maybe we can get everybody that comes in town at the same time. We can all get everybody that's on the podcast and have like a little mini reunion.
Great. That'd be fun.
Now, we appreciate your time, Valerie. It's been awesome talking to you and catching up. I'm sure everybody in Anderson is going to love hearing about you. And so we really appreciate you taking time tonight.
Well, thank you for your time, and thanks for the invite. I really appreciate it.
All right.
It's good seeing you.
So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. So for Steve Ellis, Dan Albers, and Valerie Moore, you've been watching This Week in Anderson. We'll catch you next week.